Welcome to Gospel Truth with Andrew Wommack, a teaching ministry that focuses on God's unconditional love and grace. And now, here's Andrew.
Welcome to another very special edition of our Gospel Truth broadcast. Today I'm continuing an interview with Dr. Grady McMurtry. So at our program, at the end of our program yesterday, we were talking about the Pangea and the continental drift, and you were talking about that these stretch marks, as you described this rift that goes all the way around the world, that these stretch marks are proof that it happened relatively quickly.
Right.
You also made the point that the deposits at the mouth of every major river in the world only have about 4,500 years worth of sediment.
Correct.
And if evolution was true and it took hundreds of millions of years, there would be all of this sediment stretched all across the Atlantic, the Pacific, as these things move.
See, you wouldn't even see the stretch marks because there'd be mud on top.
All right, and
But
so
the sheer fact we can see them, and we have what are called abyssal plains, flat sand bottoms right up against the side of the continents, proves that mud never came into the Atlantic in the first place.
Okay, so my question at the end of the program yesterday, and I want to start today, is how do the evolutionists deal with this?
Well, I think that you said it very well. They refuse to think about it. They certainly censure it from anybody else knowing about it. Even if they know about it, they don't want anybody else to know about it. And if they do know about it, then they make up fairy tales for adults when they're confronted. For instance, think with me for a second. When the continents were fitting together and the hot rock, hot water come up from below. Now, there's some other things we need to really take a look at in the Indian that are very interesting, but in the Atlantic here, think with me. When this material comes out from the middle, then the oldest material should be on the edge near the continents, because new material would be coming out of the middle, correct? Right?
So say that again.
Okay.
I'm not sure I got you.
Well, new material would be coming out of the middle,
Right.
but as they're moving apart, that means the older material should be at the end near
true.
the continents,
Right.
because new material would be coming out of the middle, correct? But if you do potassium-argon dates on these things, and I will tell you, potassium-argon is not reliable, but I'm simply saying the evolutionists have done this. We've taken cores. And what you find out is the oldest material is in the middle and the youngest is at the edge. That's contradictory to their position, which again shows there's a problem.
And how do they deal with this problem?
They don't.
They ignore it.
They have no way of doing it. And of course, you probably have heard about magnetic reversals, and the Earth's magnetic field has flipped north and south. First of all, that's again a fairy tale for adults. There is absolutely nowhere in the bottom of the Atlantic that you can take a compass and have it turn 180 degrees around. What you have is, first of all, doing cores, and this has all been cored, you find that there is a totally random pattern. What you find is that there are strong north-south and weak north-south, and they say the weak is reversal. But it's not. It's not a reversal, it's just a weak. And we have actually found that if you have two strongs, you can induce a south in between the two pointing north. So they don't have a leg to stand on with this stuff at all. And this shows that it all happened very quickly in only 1 year, as the Bible says. And when you take a look at the Indian Ocean here again we have a crack, but notice if you follow the crack back here, now you'll notice there's a split. If we take a look here, you can see there's a split in the Indian Ocean that comes to the Atlantic. But if you go to the Indian Ocean, you have a split going east and west, but if you follow that crack north here, it's just one crack, goes to about the equator, turns about 45 degrees northwest, goes towards Saudi Arabia. Then it turns, comes right straight down the middle of the Gulf of Aden, and you can see the crack is getting smaller. But it then turns and goes right straight at the bottom of the Red Sea from the south to the north end, getting smaller. But here at the north end at Eilat in Israel, that crack turns and goes right straight up to the Jordan River Valley. It goes right straight to the Dead Sea, right straight to the Jordan, right straight to the Sea of Galilee, right straight up the River Jordan, and starts here at Caesarea Philippi.
So is that the end of this crack?
So that's where it begins.
So, and
That's not the end, that's the beginning.
And so you can say that because of the way it widens out as it goes along?
First of all, you can see it starts very, very small, very tight, and of course initially what's going to happen, you have tremendous pressure at that point and a crack starts to form. And it forms what is going south there, the Jordan River Valley, today. Turns, forms what is today the bottom of the Red Sea, and then comes out here. At that point it is now underwater. Remember, there's 1 mile of water there now. And then that crack comes out, and it actually goes all the way around the world. We'll take a look at it in the Pacific too, but it's 40,000 miles long.
Wow.
It's called altogether, the entire unit, is called the mid-oceanic ridge. But I said that there was a sea 1 mile deep here, and then there was a mile of water that came up from below, correct? Mm-hmm. What's one proof of that? Well, first of all, you can see it here, obviously. But if you take a look from India to Australia along the south slope of Indonesia, there are 2 continental shelves. One is a mile deep, and it breaks off and goes another mile deep, showing that as the ocean floor, the water comes out from underneath, the ocean floor sinks, breaks off and leaves a double continental shelf here as well. There's something else that you can see.
So the first continental shelf would have been the one that was 1 mile deep, and then as the water came up, it dropped another.
Because a mile of water came in from underneath, it has to drop another mile.
So you've got 2 continental shelves.
And that gives you this double stair step here.
And so do you see that anywhere else?
You do, because in the Pacific, you can actually see it. Here's a crack coming out of the Indian Ocean and breaking Antarctica off of Australia. Now, on a round globe, which I do use a round globe when I'm teaching this live, you can actually see that Antarctica perfectly fits into the southern coast of Australia.
Again, there's some distortion on a flat map.
But on a flat map, the distortion. But you can basically see it. It's just that it's not as detailed as it would be on a round globe.
But it's still very obvious.
But it is quite obvious. And you'll even notice that there are actually double continental shelves along the south slope of Australia here. But the crack goes out across the Pacific, comes up along the coast of California to Alaska, through the Aleutians, through Kamchatka, Japan, the Philippines, comes across New Guinea, out to Samoa, turns 90 degrees at Samoa, goes right straight through New Zealand, and meets itself again here.
Now, is there a significance that all of these ridges and stuff are connected worldwide? They show that it was one occurrence versus
it shows
multiple?
a lot of things. It shows being one occurrence. And again, you mentioned double shelves. Well, you'll notice that from the Gulf of Alaska along the south slope of the Aleutian Islands to Kamchatka, you have that 2-step staircase. There's a continental shelf 1 mile deep, then it breaks off and goes another mile deep. But the same is true here from Kamchatka past Japan, the Philippines, China, and Vietnam here. Also, the western continental shelf of New Zealand perfectly fits the eastern continental shelf of Australia, and you can see where there's a crack here and stretch marks, where New Zealand moved rapidly away from Australia at the time of the flood as well. Now, of course, this from here in the Baja all the way around the Pacific here and through New Zealand is a part of the Ring of Fire, the volcanic Ring of Fire. But of course, there's another crack that comes down along here through the Andes that's part of it as well. But you'll notice all these little dimples and dots north of the equator here that are underwater. Those are 20,000 underwater volcanoes. We'd mentioned about how there were so many thousands of volcanoes. But you have some like the Hawaiian Islands that actually stick out of the water after the flood. But there are thousands and thousands of volcanoes that are underwater. And we can see so many things with this. Now, this is a map of the entire world showing the entire extent. You can see it starts at Caesarea Philippi, comes down the Jordan, down the Red Sea, out the Gulf of Aden, splits here in the Indian Ocean, going around the Pacific there. There's another crack that comes here up the Atlantic. And you asked about where does it end? Well, there's the end, right there, when it hits northern Russia. It goes sort of past the North Pole. And as I like to say euphemistically, it runs out of steam when it hits northern Russia. But all these things are clearly visible. See, it comes up here, curves past the North Pole, because the North Pole is not on here. Goes up, curves past the North Pole, and ends there. Okay. That is the end of it right there.
All right.
And
That's
of course,
amazing.
The significance of starting at Caesarea Philippi is beyond belief.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, this is prior to the nation of Israel and stuff, but yet everything is established in the heart of God.
Well, and remember, this is where Jesus takes his disciples, walks them to Caesarea Philippi, says to them, who do men say the Son of Man is? And they say, well, some say you're this and some say you're that. And he says, yeah, well, that's what they say. And then he asks one of the 2 most important questions in the entire New Testament. Yeah, that's what they say, but who do you say that I am? And he's asking that at the very spot where the crack starts and breaks off 3 continents. It's the very spot where the Jordan River starts as clear living water coming right out of a rock. You've been there.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've been there. I've seen it.
And so this is not coincidence. Jesus knew exactly where he was, and of course, as I say, he was there before that crack was.
That's right.
But the fact of the matter is that this has tremendous biblical significance.
And all of this, you were talking about the power of these volcanoes. I don't want to get you out of sequence on this, but all of this volcano releasing that steam and all of this stuff into the atmosphere, this would account for what is often said by the evolutionists as the Ice Age, which is supposed to be long,
exactly.
long time
Evolutionists talk about multiple ice ages. They believe in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years. The fact is that there was only one ice age. It occurred after the flood of Noah. It was caused by the events that initiated the flood of Noah. Now,
so it's actually a result of the flood.
It's not instantaneous. It's a result of, because what happens is you have this tremendous amount of hot water coming to the surface, mixing with what are already subtropical seas. Remember, the Earth is a subtropical from pole to pole prior to the flood. Mm-hmm. And we have the physical evidence to prove that too. For instance, in Greenland in 1883, we found fossilized breadfruit trees.
Wow.
Well, breadfruit trees don't grow in freezing conditions, you know. And recently, we found fossil insects and fossil dinosaurs within 200 miles of the South Pole. Hmm. So clearly, it was a lot warmer in the past there. Uh-huh. And so what happens is you have this hot water coming out, mixing with what's already there. When you have hot water, you know as well as I do, you have tremendous amounts of evaporation. The hotter the water, the more water evaporates. Mm-hmm. So it's evaporating very quickly. But you have thousands of volcanoes all going off at the same time. That causes ash and other aerosols to go into the atmosphere and block out sunlight, which causes the atmosphere to cool rapidly. Now, these are the perfect conditions to build polar ice caps, because when you have a lot of moisture being evaporated into cold air, you have the perfect conditions for ice, snow formation, and the polar ice caps start to form as a result of being in the initial events of the flood. And then, you know, we weren't there. This is our best estimate. Our best estimate is that the ice age starts initially, but again, it is nothing to be worried about initially. But it actually increases in intensity for probably about 500 years. This would be past the time of the man Job. And the first mention of ice and snow in the Bible is in the book of Job. And then, because the volcanoes settle down, the ash comes down by precipitation or gravity and so forth, the sunlight starts to come back in, the polar ice caps melt back to roughly where they are today. And so the whole thing lasts perhaps around 700 years.
Now, this would be during the time of Abraham, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Abraham's a young man at the time that Job's alive. So, you know, the book of Job is written basically 2000 BC. Abraham would have been a young man at the time. And, of course, Job's life. And so, yes, this is, you know, from a chronological standpoint when it's occurring.
Now, here's a total layman asking a dumb question, but I bet there's a lot of other people watching this whole thing. Most people kind of consider that the Ice Age was like worldwide.
Well, and unfortunately, as I tell people, never get your education from government-run television, National Geographic, Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, Hollywood. You know, the animated movies and the other movies that Hollywood has made in recent years about ice ages and catastrophes of that sort make you think the Earth becomes a big snowball. But that's simply not true.
Well, it couldn't be if Abraham and the things recorded in Scripture, you know, continued on. That wasn't during an ice age where they were.
Well, let's take a look real quick. This is a graphic showing some relatively sized volcanoes of the past. That's 1980. It produced 1 cubic kilometer of ash. But if you take a look at Krakatoa, the sound heard around the world in 1883, it produced 18 cubic kilometers, 18 times the size of Mountain Hills.
Now, you know, I've never heard any of these things. Probably many of our viewers haven't. But I guess all of this is documented?
Oh, yes, sir. Okay. Now, Krakatoa is in Indonesia. The explosion was so violent it was heard in downtown London, England.
Wow, and this is 1883.
That's 1883, and that's why it's called the sound heard around the world. However, Tambora is also in Indonesia. Again, these are right on the equator. In 1815, it produced 80 cubic kilometers of ash and ejecta. Look it up. 1816, Europe had the year without summer. It snowed in all 12 months of the year in Europe in 1816 because this one volcano cooled the Earth so rapidly that in 1 year we have snow in all 12 months in Europe.
Now, when you say Europe, what part are you talking about specifically?
I'm talking about the entire European continent.
So that would have been London, Berlin, any of those places?
Yes.
Wow.
And, well, it can get much bigger and much worse than that.
Well, I've been there in the summer, and I guarantee you, for it to snow all 12 months of the year would definitely be a different climate than we have now.
Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines, again, near the equator, erupted in 1991. It dropped the Earth's temperature, atmospheric temperature, 1.3 degrees in 1 year. Again, this just shows you the power of volcanoes to cool the Earth. Now imagine what happens if you have thousands of volcanoes all going up at the same time. You're going to get an ice age. And we know, for instance, the super volcanoes that occurred at Yellowstone and other eruptions were even much larger than this. And of course, this is what's happening at the time of the flood. We have super volcanoes erupting, thousands of other volcanoes erupting.
So what would you say at the time of the flood? How many volcanoes?
We don't even know.
Hundreds?
Well, there's in the area of 30, 40,000 on Earth today. The vast majority of them are older. Some are new, of course.
Well, this may be off the subject, but here's a question for you that I bet you can answer. This whole thing about global warming and stuff, if all of this ash was thrown into the atmosphere and stuff, and yet the Earth recovered in a relatively short period of time, doesn't this suggest that the Earth has a mechanism to be able to adjust and handle these things?
We can't cool the Earth and we can't warm it, either one.
But the Earth has a mechanism to be able to handle whatever's thrown at it, like these volcanic
God has put
eruptions.
in mechanisms to handle this, and the two things that drive climate and weather change on Earth have nothing to do with humans. Sunspot activity on the sun has been documented to be perfectly in line with what happens with climate and weather, and the second thing is volcanic eruptions.
But that's our fluorocarbons that are affecting the sun.
Nope. Of course,
People can't answer that, can they?
No, and of course I go into things like that, including if we're causing the polar ice caps to melt, why at the same time are the polar ice caps on Mars melting? It's not us, it's variations in the sun's activity.
Yeah, and there's cycles that the Earth goes through.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got you off
No,
topic here.
but I love that subject because I just bury those
And so
environmental terrorists.
you have a lot of things on creationism way off the topic of just Noah's flood.
Oh, yes. I mean, literally talk on 50 subjects in a moment's notice.
That's awesome.
But we have a whole 2-hour presentation on why global warming is not true and not caused by people. But this map, you've talked about the ice age that occurred after the flood. Now, this map, regardless of whether you're a creationist or evolutionist, makes no difference. This map shows the maximum extent of polar ice at any time in the northern hemisphere in the past, period. And the southern hemisphere, it's irrelevant because there's nobody down there at the end of the flood, you know.
All right, so Grady, is this accepted? I mean, would even evolutionists accept that this is the maximum extent?
Yes, and I have been between St. Petersburg and Moscow where the ice stopped. Terminal moraines, just like in Ohio, the terminal moraines. Think about it. This map shows you the maximum extent of polar ice at any time in the past, regardless of whether you believe in creation or evolution, right? And you will notice the ice only gets as far south as the Canadian-U.S. border, except for the area right around the Great Lakes, basically, and New England. It covers sea ice, Greenland, Iceland, of course. It covers Ireland, Scotland, England. Covers Scandinavia, smaller portions of northern Russia, but again, the ice never got as far south as Berlin. The ice never got as far south as Moscow. And of course, this map also shows us how the people came from the Tower of Babel experience and got to North and South America. They simply walked. But the fact of the matter is that the ice age is not nearly as catastrophic as people have been taught or influenced by things like Hollywood-made movies. It simply isn't true.
So if you accept that idea, well, then that lends itself towards evolution or something, because human life couldn't have existed. Over here is Israel, and it's way far south.
Exactly. You see, again, Job is written 350 years after the flood. It's the first mention of ice and snow in the Bible. That's in the middle of the Ice Age, because, again, it's about 700 years, so Job's right in the middle. But you'll notice they never even saw the ice and snow for the first few generations. And how did the animals and the people coming out of the ark survive? Well, they're over here. They're nowhere near the ice.
Yeah, up here would be Mount Ararat, somewhere in
It'd be
this.
over here.
Okay.
This is Turkey. So
I was
it'd be over
close.
here. Yep.
Only about 1,000 miles off.
No, you were only a couple hundred. But the fact of the matter is that they then migrate to what becomes Babylon, in that area, Tower of Babel, for 150 years. Now, the animals have already started to migrate. They come out of the ark, and the wild animals migrate immediately. The domestic animals primarily stay with the people. But immediately, the wild animals will start to migrate. They get a 150-year head start on the people. So they're already going all the way around the world. 150 years later, the people start to migrate. Now, if I can just show you something here, because you've got to be able as a Christian to answer these questions. You know, how did people So if the Bible's right, how'd they get from the Tower of Babel to North and South America to become the Incas? Or how'd they get to be the Aborigines in Australia? Well, during the Ice Age, you're sucking tremendous amounts of water out of the oceans into the polar ice caps. You know, there's so much ice in Antarctica, it literally pushes the entire continent down. That's how much ice is there. And so what happens is that the ocean level drops 200 to 300 feet. Remember the continental shelves that were dry at creation. Well, during the flood, everything's covered. But look right here, for instance. And now I'm going to go back to this. Do you see these little lines in the continental shelf between Borneo and Malaysia in here?
Mm-hmm. Right here you're talking about?
Yeah, these little lines right there.
Okay.
And there's a few right here, too. You can see right there.
Uh-huh.
Right there. Those are river canyons. Now, you can't cut a river canyon underwater.
Makes sense.
That shows that during the Ice Age, which lasted about 700 years, that as the water level goes down, wet mud layers are exposed. They're going to erode quickly, initially, and then dry out into harder rock as they're cut. But this shows that river canyons are being cut down here during the Ice Age, but you've got a land bridge from Southeast Asia to Australia. And then if we go over here, look at the land bridge that exists from Siberia to Alaska is wider than the state of Alaska.
Yeah.
And then if you take a look at the map with the glaciation, you notice that that area, there's no glaciers during the Ice Age. That people can walk here and walk down into North America, walk down into South America, because there are areas where the ice doesn't exist there. And so you have these great land bridges. And then when the ice melts back to where it is today, the end of the Ice Age, these continental shelves get re-inundated. And when they get re-inundated, the people are then isolated.
Well, this is very interesting, and we're out of time today.
I believe it.
So we're going to have to take this up again on our program tomorrow. But the reason we're sharing these things is to show that Noah's flood can account for all of these layers of sediment and all of these things that evolution is dependent upon, and it happened in 1 year's period of time. I think this is very powerful, and Grady, I appreciate you for sharing it.
On today's program, Andrew interviewed Dr. Grady McMurtry. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. McMurtry's ministry, visit his website at creationworldview.org. Andrew's complete teaching titled Christian Philosophy is available in a brand new book for £9.99. Or you can get this teaching in a companion study guide that's perfect for home groups, Sunday schools, and for individual study. It's been designed so that anyone, anywhere, at any time can reach an unbeliever, disciple a new believer, or grow with others in the Lord. Not only is the entire teaching included in the study guide, you can also print off as many copies as you'd like when you download the PDF files from the included data CD. This valuable resource is available for £17.50. This teaching is also available on either CD or DVD as seen on TV for £30. Go to awme.net and click on today's TV offer to see the options. Andrew's fifth audio teaching in today's series is titled Creation versus Evolution, Part 1. It's available for £3 when you write or call. But if you're simply unable to afford it, Andrew and his partners will send this fifth CD free of charge. You can use your credit card to order resources through our website at awme.net. While you're there, you can discover more product details and download additional free resources. Or you can order through our helpline Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Our helpline number is 01922 473 300. When calling from outside the UK, you must dial your international calling code, then 44 1922 473 300. If the lines are busy, remember you can order ministry materials 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at awme.net. To write us, use the address on your screen. We hope to hear from you today. We'd like to point out Andrew's upcoming speaking schedule. Mark your calendars to come meet Andrew at one of these events and let the Word of God transform your life. He'll be in Warwick, England next week for the Andrew Wommack Ministries of Europe Ministers Conference, October 22nd through the 24th. in Kampala, Uganda for a Gospel Truth Seminar October 26th and 27th, and at the Glory of Christ Church in Kampala Sunday, October 28th. He'll also be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for a Gospel Truth Seminar November 8th through the 10th, at Calvary Cathedral in Fort Worth on Sunday, November 11th, and in Phoenix, Arizona for a Gospel Truth Seminar January 3rd through the 5th. For more details on Andrew's next meeting in your area, call our helpline or visit our website at awme.net.
In the heart of the Midwest lies the longest-running Charis Bible College Extension School in the United States. Founded in August 2003, CBC Chicago has focused on one main goal: discipleship. CBC Chicago Director Cindy Quarles.
Discipleship is where the lasting change comes.
It's like an incubator. It's like a greenhouse for people to just come and just grow and be surrounded by people who just raise you to a new level.
You become a family, and in a family there's safety, and in a family there's growth.
When I got to Charis after that first year, I saw a clear line between law and grace. And I was like, oh, now I see.
There is a college called Charis Bible College. That's a place where you can get grace of God.
For more information about Charis Bible College Chicago, log on to cbcchicago.org and get ready to change your life. Are you a world changer? Charis Bible College has extension schools around the world. The same truth that sets you free at our school in England will also set you free in Belfast, St. Petersburg, Amsterdam, Kampala, Chennai, and South Africa. Go to awme.net or call our phone center and ask for a complete list of Charis Bible College locations near you. Change your life. Change the world.
I want to make you aware that we now have our ministry, our Bible College ministry, available on online Bible school. And what this does, it allows you to go at your pace, take as many courses as you want, but you're still in a structured class situation where you have interaction with other students as well as a facilitator. It helps discipline you, but you can go at your own pace anywhere in the world. We have a web address on the screen, and I encourage you to go check out our online Bible school today. It is not enough for you to have need. Need doesn't motivate God. God is motivated by His own love to meet our needs, and His power is available, but the thing that will release or appropriate this power of God is faith.